it's your girl Z from TransVoiceLessons.com. Today we are going to talk about where to begin in voice feminization. This video is intended for complete beginners, but it will be helpful regardless of your proficiency level. If you felt confused, overwhelmed, aimless, or lost, this video is for you. So let's get started. Part 1, the beginning. Voice is all about understanding what to listen for and what to take action towards. By listening first and listening carefully, we can better process our experiences and navigate towards our goals. There are 2 primary keys we need to listen for at first, so let's listen carefully. Key number 1, pitch. Let's listen to the sound of pitch moving around. You hear that? That is pitch. It's the sound of high and low. It makes things sound like they are rising or falling. Most people are already aware that there is a difference in pitch between masculine and feminine speakers. Maybe you've even tried to raise your pitch already, but instead it made you sound strained or uncomfortable. Maybe you've even heard me say that pitch isn't that important and everyone spends too much time on pitch. Why is this? Well, you see, there's actually another element going on that's even more important for us to listen to at first than pitch, but it's a lot less obvious. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this other thing. Key number 2, vocal weight. So now we're going to be listening for different amounts of vocal weight. It sounds like buzziness or less buzziness. Let's take a listen. Ah, 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 ah. Hear that sound? It's like really buzzy or less buzzy. That is vocal weight. It's the sound of intensity and forcefulness. It makes things sound buzzier and more dense. It's generally a masculine vocal cue, and it massively influences how our pitch behaves. See, it's not that we care about weight or pitch by themselves, it's that we care about the interaction between these 2 things. The first fundamental goal in voice feminization is to sound relaxed, comfortable, and reduce the effort that it takes to get to higher pitches. With too much weight, this pitch area will feel strained, unsustainable, and it will sound too harsh. If we get to a higher pitch with a whole lot of weight, 1, 2, 3, it's going to be very difficult for you to maintain that. It's not going to sound very feminine. It's going to stand out as being labored. So we care about the interaction between pitch and weight, and this is the best place for beginners to start. So at this point, we've talked about 2 different things, weight and pitch. By now, you should loosely understand the concepts and loosely understand what it sounds like. Now, the next important question is, what actions do we need to take? If we're just getting started in voice feminization, what is the simplest, most straightforward thing we can start doing? Okay, so to help you get started taking action, let's go ahead and do a little bit of basic pitch mimicry. This will be helpful for us just to get our hands dirty with sound. So do your best and try to mimic along with me. Mm. Mm. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. So I hope you were able to match my pitch without much difficulty. The reason why we did that is because we just did one of the hardest things in the entire process. We took action. So that was just some basic pitch exploration, and that's honestly amazing to do. If you're just getting started, you can just play with your voice. Just move your pitch around and have fun with it. Now, similarly to the pitch mimicry exercise we were doing a moment ago, I also want to do some really basic weight mimicry because we just want to make sure that we can get the real basics out of the way before we get to these exercises a little later. So I'm going to make some sounds and I want you to make them back to me. We're going to start really light as if we're trying to talk to like a cute little kitten like that, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to try and sound a lot like angrier. Okay? And if you hear that, there's a significant difference in the intensity, the loudness, and most importantly, the buzziness between those two sounds. Let's try and do that again. So this time we're going to make a light sound like so. Almost like a yawn. It's very smooth. Notice how it's not very buzzy. And now we're going to try to add weight. Oh. So that is what it feels like to make basic movements of weight. The intensity, the loudness, and most importantly, the buzziness changes. Now, in order for us to really get some value for feminization, now we need to think about how pitch and weight work together. So I'm going to give you 3 simple exercises to play around with to help you understand how pitch and weight influence each other. Exercise number 1, humming and sliding. So let's all go ahead here and make a heavy and low-pitched humming sound. You should be able to feel that it's kind of buzzy. You should be able to feel that it's probably lower than what you want. And then we're going to try to move it up in pitch so we end up with a very heavy and high kind of sound, like so. Do you hear how that gets louder? It gets more forceful. It gets more intense. That's what it sounds like if we keep heavy weight while we go high. Now let's try and do the same thing, but reduce weight while we go higher. Ah. 1, 2, 3. Then if we start to find the quality that we're looking for, that lighter and higher sound, we can try to casually shift it into speech and see if we can maintain it. The goal of this exercise is to contrast the difference between being heavy and going higher and being light and going higher. They have very different sounds and very different feelings. So we would want you to play around with this and to try to find a higher, lighter, and cleaner sound. Exercise number 2, heavy, heavy, light. We're going to start at a lower pitch and a much heavier sound, and we're going to try and incrementally step up in pitch, like so. Ah. Then we try and do it again, but this time the third one we make light. Ah. 1, 2, 3. The purpose of this exercise is to contrast 2 heavy sounds with a much higher sound that lightens out. It'll be increasingly harder for you to go higher in pitch with that heavy sound, so try to think about making that third sound very comfortable, very easy, very relaxed. Ah. Make sure you go high enough as well. Sometimes people who don't have a lot of vocal experience will do something like this. And we're not looking for that. We're looking for a much bigger contrast between the 2 qualities. Let's go ahead and take a couple more listens to this exercise. Blue, 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 blue. Exercise number 3, using a pitch tracker and experimenting. A pitch tracker like this shows us what our pitch is doing. And for that reason, it's extremely valuable for people who are less musically inclined. You can do all of the previous exercises that we've already done while watching a pitch tracker, and that would be honestly great for you. But what we're going to do this time is we're going to try and start low and heavy. And we're going to try to bring our pitch up until it kind of feels like it gets stuck a little bit, like And not everyone's going to get stuck there, but a significant majority of beginners do. And if you're part of that group that gets stuck there, what we're going to try and do is we're going to keep going up to that point, and then when we get to that point, we're going to relax and try to go higher, like so. And if we start to get that sound, that lighter, higher sound, then we're actually going to try and go back down and keep it light, like so. And now you hear when I go down, it doesn't sound so heavy or intense or masculine. It actually sounds like I'm reaching the bottom of my vocal range, but it's only like there, you know? So I'll do that same thing again from the beginning. And I can't really go any lower than that at that point unless I get heavier. So this is an amazing exercise for everybody to try out. Exercise number 4, creaking and exploring different amounts of vocal weight. Now this exercise is a bit of a bonus, and unless your creak is very relaxed, which some beginners can just do right away, then it's probably not going to be very useful for you. So we're going to start with this relaxed creak, and we're going to shift from that into both a heavy and light sound to contrast and compare the differences. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now I'm going to go higher and lighter. It feels incredibly relaxed, it feels incredibly low effort, and it really allows us to physically feel the difference between the two sounds. The most important thing about this exercise is that you're starting from a relaxed and stable creak. So we don't want any, that's not a stable creak. We want something relaxed. And then try to move that heavier and lighter and see how it feels. Good luck. Now, after you explore these exercises and you're finding a quality that's lighter and more comfortable up high, then what you should try and do is work on speaking fluidly with it, like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's okay if it sounds like this at first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The key is that it's light and comfortable and fluid. So after you use these exercises and you start to find this quality, try to start utilizing it. That's where we get the usefulness out of it. We experiment because we're trying to create a wide variety of possible options and experiences. Then out of those options we gain, we can start to work towards what sounds and feels best for us. As a general goal in feminization, we're seeking a clear, pure, full, light, and higher voice during these exercises. If we wish to add noisiness, grittiness, or operate at a lower pitch, those are all totally fine and valid aesthetic options, but it helps in the beginning to work towards this very clean kind of target. It makes us less prone to making mistakes. Remember that the difference between a learning opportunity and a mistake is whether you are aware of it or not. If you're doing something wrong and you're not aware that you're doing something wrong, that is a mistake. If you're doing something wrong, but you know it's wrong, that is a question and a problem to solve, and those are some of the most exciting moments in vocal development. After exploring a range of different sounds and finding something close to the target, work to casually and fluidly speak with that quality. So let me show you all exactly what my voice sounds like if I completely remove my resonance modification, but I keep my weight and my pitch the same.
Okay, so it's like this, do you hear that? It's very smooth, it's very pure, it's comfortably operating at higher pitches. This is actually what a feminized vocal foundation sounds like with no smaller vocal tract. So like if we took like an average cis-fem voice and then we expanded the vocal tract, you'd get a sound that's something kind of like this. It's totally fine if you sound like this at first, because our first priority is making sure that your pitch is comfortable, that your voice is smooth, and that your speech feels balanced and sustainable. Oftentimes, people may play with weight and pitch, but get frustrated because they hear the voice is still off. There is more work to be done than just pitch and weight modification, but it's definitely where you'll want to get started at first. It's got good pitch, it's got good weight, it's very comfortable,
And then I can just change the resonance on it in order to get the sound quality that I'm looking for. In feminization, we need to avoid confusing breathiness for reduced weight. Being breathy does reduce your weight because it makes you sound less buzzy, but it also introduces unwanted noise. So let's listen to some examples of breathiness versus our target sound. Ah, 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 ah.
ah, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Ah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Ah,
Ah.
ah, ah.
If you find you keep going breathy, there are some possible tricks that you can take advantage of, but honestly the most reliable solution to fix it is to over-exaggerate it and then work to reduce the over-exaggeration. There are many reasons why you might end up being too breathy, but the simplest solution for all is to experiment, process, and make incremental change towards your goal. Why is this so important? So this answer will require a little bit of theory to help us. Let's imagine that the sound of vocal weight is created by the mass of the vocal folds, how thick or dense they are. And pitch instead is created by how fast the vocal folds move. Testosterone causes the vocal folds to grow and swell, which increases their mass. This increased mass causes masculine voices to be buzzier than feminine voices on average. Additionally, since those vocal folds that were exposed to testosterone have more mass, they're resistant to moving faster and reaching higher pitches unless they're put under way more tension. You can think about it like a string. If the string is a lot thicker, we have to stretch it way harder to get it to go to a higher pitch. If we used a thinner string, we wouldn't have to stretch it as hard to make it reach that same pitch. By learning how to control your weight, you will allow yourself to reach higher pitches with less tension from the vocal folds. In essence, we can learn to raise our pitch by reducing weight instead of purely pulling the vocal folds tighter and adding tension. Certain combinations of mass and tension are perceived as more or less masculine at different pitch areas. A high tension, high mass voice at 200 hertz is going to sound more masculine than a low tension, low mass voice at 200 hertz. By learning to hear our vocal weight in relation to pitch, we can then use our ears to guide our body into shedding vocal weight, which allows us to reach those higher feminine pitch areas with far less tension, which allows us to maintain and sustain it much easier. Therefore, training weight and pitch is both foundational and functional, and that is why we like to start with it first. Okay, so hold up a second. You'll notice that we didn't talk about resonance so far. And personally, I believe it is the most important element for effectively modifying the sex of a voice. However, pitch and weight are both more foundational elements. Once we have a stable, clean, and light foundation, then we can begin modifying resonance for the best results. I actually used to teach resonance first in my students for about 3.5 years, and what I observed is that a resonance first approach is far more polarizing. Students will quickly succeed or quickly get stuck with very little in between. Resonance first can create the most shocking and dramatic results in the shortest amount of time, but it puts the cart before the horse for some people, and some people may have way more success starting with sound production, whereas others may have more success starting with resonance. In general, though, by practicing weight and pitch first, we can build a beautiful long-term foundation that supports our efforts for resonance modification. If you're getting started in this process and you have a singing background or voice background, it may be advisable for you to start with resonance first. If you've worked with an SLP or voice professional and you've already lightened your voice, or you feel your voice is light enough and high enough, then it's advisable to work on resonance. However, if you're an absolute beginner, it's typically better in the long term to start with both pitch and weight training together. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping. If you are absolutely brand new to doing anything with your voice, you will want to consider if you are a vocal underdoer. Vocal underdoers are individuals with a history of avoiding voice. They're often hard to hear, weak sounding, and seemingly slower to learn new vocal behaviors. Vocal underdoers typically use their voice less than an hour a day, and because of that, they have core vocal deficiencies which need to be addressed when getting started. If you are an underdoer, it's important to take time in the beginning of your vocal journey to simply play, experiment, and nourish the fundamentals of voice outside of a feminization context. Feminization will be made more difficult if these core deficiencies aren't addressed. These core deficiencies can be addressed by a host of vocal function exercises. I'll be making a video more on that in the future, but I'm sure Google Result can help you get started on those as well. So identify if you're a vocal underdoer and understand that the process may get started a little slower for you, but it's all good in the long run. You just have to build some of those core skills. The summary. So in conclusion, if you are an absolute beginner, you need to work on trying to lighten your voice while you go higher. Not just go higher and not just lighten your voice, but interact with them both at the same time so you can genuinely find a comfortable sound at a higher operational pitch. We can think of this as weight and pitch, or we can just think of this as being lighter and more comfortable when we go higher. But regardless, that is the first step that we want you to try and achieve in voice feminization. This step will make everything else so much easier. Resonance is commonly confused for weight in people's voices. And so by practicing this ahead of time, you're setting yourself up for long-term success. The interaction between weight and pitch is one of the most fundamental relationships in all of voice. That is why it's so beneficial to start with. It doesn't just teach us about how to sound feminine or how to use our voice in a more healthy and sustainable way, but it also trains our interaction with sound. Sound production is very much the most basic of everything. It's creating sound. And any practice of sound production helps us much further down the road. Sound production is a little bit easier for beginners to hear than resonance, so it's very helpful for us to start there for those reasons as well. So in summary, what are you trying to do at first in voice feminization? You are trying to learn how to shed some weight and go higher so you can access high pitches without any strain or discomfort. Then you try to take that lighter and comfortable sound and use it in casual and fluid speech. What you're doing is building the foundational core to your feminine voice. You want to generate this beautiful stream of sound and then modify it with resonance after. Okay? So play around with the exercises provided here, listen to the targets, experiment, process your experience, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask down below. So that's all for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please just post down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to support the work I'm doing, please just check us out on Patreon. If you would like to work together in private lessons or work with one of my colleagues or sign up for our group classes, please just email support@transvoicelessons.com. And don't forget to check out my music too if you like sound. And otherwise, thank you all so much and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!